Okay, we're live for the first Saturday live stream in a little bit. And for those who are unaware, it's because I was in Germany covering Munich High End, and I'm among doing a number of other things. Wow, words today. I do apologize. I'm a bit out of it, just because I'm dealing with the jet lag, and I don't know what happened. Like last night, I just wasn't able to sleep at all, so dealing with that. But yeah, apart from that, back to regularly scheduled programming here on the Headphone Show with live streams as frequently as possible on weekends when I'm able. That seems to be the schedule. As usual, guys, yeah, let me know what the audio is like. Audio is good, I see, so that's great. One day we'll have someone who is running the production, but for the moment it's just a one-man show. I definitely need to get some more guests on. I actually think I know who the next guest is going to be. I don't know for sure, but I would like to have Golden Sound on, because we met up in Germany. He went to the show as well, and he's just an awesome guy to hang out with, and so it'd be great to have him on the show. And then I also want to have Sajid Amit from the Amplify Audiophile show. I love his channel and what he's doing. So I got a number of people in mind. It's just a matter of making sure that it works for everybody's schedule. So we'll have that, and eventually, and you guys will have better conversation to watch rather than just me droning on about stuff and ranting about things. But I figure we'll save that for another time. In the meantime, let the rants begin. And of course, as usual, let me know if you have any questions or comments or topics, and we will dive in. And also, just if you guys have questions about anything from Munich High End, I think this would be a great format to sort of talk about that stuff. At least initially, we do have. I saw somebody asking about this before, but we do have a number of videos in the works on it. It's just you're gonna have to wait to see those because we're currently in the process of editing it. We got back last week, on Monday, Tuesday, depending on who it was, because we were in different places. But we realized that we didn't each have all the footage that we needed, so we spent a lot of time kind of transferring footage around, and now we're just in the editing phase of everything. So I'm expecting there to be some additional coverage from us, and then also some interviews that we did, which was a ton of fun. We got to actually chat with a number of manufacturers about stuff, but also just taking in the whole Munich High End experience. It was great. So I'd love to talk about that today if I can. Jason, thank you. ZMF Atrium review when we're not going to be doing a ZMF Atrium review on this channel, not anytime soon at least, but for that you're going to want to check out DMS's channel, where he is. I'm not sure if he's done one already, but or it'll be soon if he hasn't done it already, but that's where you go for the ZMF Atrium review. And Jason, thank you again. EMU Teak review when that is one that is, yeah, I really would like to review EMU Teak. Okay, Jason, you just ask the question, I'll answer it. You don't need to use the super chat. But yeah, EMU Teak, I just need to find out when it's available, and then we'll probably just need to buy one. I asked Drop if they could send one, and I don't think they have any available, so we'll just need to get one in. Because yeah, I would love to review that one. Rob, thank you. When you review the sound quality of a headphone or IEM, are there properties that are inherently less important than others? Soundstage, timbre, transients. Yeah, and I think that's actually different. Oh my god, what's happening here? I just realized my camera is having all kinds of fun. Can you see this okay? Oh, there we go. Okay, fixed. Blowing out the highlights. It's great. Yeah, I don't think everybody uniquely focuses on the same things. So, for example, Kryn cares a lot about soundstage. So, for him, his assessments of technicalities, all the stuff that's different from target adherence, it's or the tonal balance stuff. That's going to factor more significantly, I think, in his assessments when compared with dynamics and all that stuff. Whereas for other people, they only care about dynamics. They don't really care about anything else. They'll care about dynamics more than they care about tonal balance or anything else to do with, the more like refinement aspects of sound quality. um, and so, I think that's the thing that, people say sometimes, you gotta follow reviewers who you um, you, like you have to have a sense of what they like, what their preferences are. But I think more important than that is understand what they're indexing more strongly for, more significantly for. And it's changed for me over time as well. And it was a long-winded answer, but like I used to care a lot more about soundstage and space, and I'd index really heavily for those things. And over time, I ended up indexing more for the sense of just separation in general, even though the soundstage aspects weren't as important, or like the clarity for trailing ends of tones. These types of things ended up mattering more to me. Um, Also, even dynamics, that kind of stuff, has mattered more to me in recent times when compared to previous. I used to not care about that at all, and then I started hearing stuff that was like really bad, like it just didn't have any sense of contrast to it, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't like that. And then I kept hearing it in other things, or like the blunted, when stuff's overdamped, like has a lot of front damping on it, that sort of like blunted character that comes through. Some people don't mind, or some people actually like that. But for me, I start to notice it more and more, and then it kind of gets to me. So yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think that the answer there is there are that people are going to care about different things. Um, and actually, this is something that Sajid brought up as well in one of his, I don't remember what video it was, but he was talking about essentially that it's like people, um, what's important to you is going to be different probably than from somebody else. And then also it's often difficult to really like when I think about what's important to me for the overall enjoyment of the experience, that can change even over the course of like one listening session. So yeah, I think you need to just, it's why people ask all these questions like, hey, what do you think about this headphone versus that headphone, which is better at whatever, at whatever price point. It's like it really depends on what you are kind of valuing, because there's a lot of nuance involved in this stuff. Jason, thank you again. Does better slam than Utopia exist? Depends what you mean by slam, because if you're talking about level, there's more. It's not a bassy headphone, but there is something that I think Focals do better than every other headphone out there, and I think it is that sense of macro contrast. I haven't heard anything better than that, other than maybe some of the Fostic stuff plays in that realm. Um, yeah, but that's and so that's why I'm also curious about the EM Utique. Um, but Focal's use of the hybrid driver with the rubber surround and all that stuff, like they do the same in their speakers. It has that contrast quality, in spades. I don't think there's anything out there that really out contrasts it, especially off of certain equipment. Um, and It's funny because when I was in Germany, I heard the Grand Utopia, like the big, speakers. I heard them before, but this time I heard them, listened to them a lot longer with different recordings and stuff. And like that is the high bar for bass quality. It's not overpowerful, tons of bass. Like, the level isn't like high. It's fairly, normal for the overall level, but that sheer sense of physicality, when the it just hits you in the chest, and it's just so articulate and so punchy. And there's a resemblance there with some of their headphones as well, because the process is the same. Like, it's the same. It's just a smaller version of similar style drivers. So if there is, I mean, it would probably be more determined by the relationship between level and contrast than just contrast on its own, because I think there are bassier. Some people they just want more bass, and that's not what the Utopia is about. It's not more bass; it's about more punchy, I guess. And that's not to say that it is like, the best quality bass out there, because again, it depends on what you index for. Like, some people are going to be more into like the bass of the one of the Odysseys, right? Or like a planar kind of bass character. HE6 is another example. And if people are more into that, where they're looking more for less about, I mean, those are still contrasty headphones, it's still fine, but like they also have the advantage of being more linear across the board in the bass, like all the way down into the sub bass, rather than that sort of gentle rise up into the mid bass that the Utopia has. Did you try Stax X9000? No, I did not. That was the one that eluded me. I actually was in a room where they had one, but there was a dude who was just like hogging it like the whole time. And I didn't get a chance to try it. And he was loving it, so it must be good, I guess. And he was kept commenting on how great it was. But no, I did not get to try that one. Have you tried Aurora Australis? No, I have not. DMS has, though. Yeah, no, I did not, Chef Steve. I did not try the Stax SX9000. It's on my list of stuff to try, though. Bu -bu -bu. Came to the realization that all it comes down to is enjoying your music. The gear, measurements, etc. is an added extra. You know, it's the reason why that comment sticks out to me is I kept thinking about this like when I was at that high-end show, right? So for those who don't know about it, it's not just headphones. It's like all audio in general. You know, there's a significant headphone section, but like there's some truly bonkers science experiment audio stuff there that is just wild. And you know, is it more perfect, more linear, more distortion free? No. Like they're not. They're just doing things that they think sound good, and some of it inevitably doesn't. But some of it does, totally irrespective of, you know, any of the stuff that we overly scrutinize for, like are, you know, super picky about in the evaluative side of things, especially when we're talking about measurements. So that's not to say that you can't measure that stuff. It's just that sometimes what we're measuring, there's not a universal or straightforward index for enjoyment from those measurements. You know, people love tube amps. I'm listening to tube amp right now. That's not more better for, you know, measurable stuff. It's just there's an enjoyment factor there that you know, I like the way it sounds, right? And it's difficult to really put that. It's really difficult to say, okay, because of this, you know, where the second harmonic is higher here, you're enjoying it more. That is going to be totally subjective and, you know, different depending on the person. Because some people, they won't like that at all. So, yeah, I tend to agree. And if anything, going to this high-end show kind of underscores that for me. That, you know, people get into all kinds of weird stuff. And some of it is like placebo, or like they don't necessarily have the most well considered reasons to be enjoying the stuff that they are, or interested in the stuff that they are. But I said this in the wrap up article that I put together. You know, it is interesting to see kind of the dragons that other people are chasing, even if I'm not chasing those same dragons. Because it kind of does it opens the perspective to just how much stuff is out there. It feels like going to that show made me feel like our little world. I mean, while it's the headphone world is the uniquely online environment, or very strongly online environment, it feels like a particularly small corner of a large, industry. Can a lack of dynamics actually make a headphone sound more detailed? I'm gonna this is something that Ruck and I probably disagree on, but I don't think so. I don't think that you know, more compression equals more detail, because you have, I mean, maybe it's one of those things where in some cases, right, but I don't think it's a sufficient condition for more detail, because you have examples of, like, the HE6 is still really detailed. It's also a very contrasty headphone. So because there are some examples of, you know, less dynamic headphones that are more detailed, doesn't mean that it's a, you know, that because it has less contrast or whatever, that it's more detailed, right? I think those are two independent variables, and you can have both because they're examples of both that do exist. So Utopia is another one. But let's see. I saw the review, and it's actually what got me interested. Oh, you're talking about the Australis? I just can't find any other opinions on it or an objective measurements of it, so I was wondering about Andrew's take. I don't have a take yet. Yeah, I did hear it like a long time ago, but I think it was still in prototype phase stage. So it's one of those where I'd love to reach out to those guys and see if they want to send one over. So maybe, but yeah, I don't have an opinion on it yet. If I were, I will say, that driver has a lot of potential and promise to it. Yeah, people make a big deal about it being like a cheap, you can find the price of the driver, it's not expensive. But tuning a headphone is so much more than just that. But I do think if I were to do a dynamic driver headphone, I probably wouldn't want to go with a custom design, at least not initially. I think it would make more sense to go with one of those, like the Timpani driver. So I would probably do similar things to what they're doing. Let's see. What's better on the DT700 than the K371? On the DT700? No, like I probably would still pick the K371. I definitely would pick the K371 of the DT700. The DT700 is just more of a subtle V-shaped kind of thing going on. And but really I would probably take the K371. The build quality on the K371 is not great. The DT700 is way better, but at the same time, the K371 is not as blunted sounding. That's really the issue with the 700 and the 900 is that I don't know what they're doing, but whatever they're doing for the front damping for both of those, it kind of just takes all the detail out. Or I don't know if it's the front damping, but I imagine it is. Whereas it's funny because like the Tiger 300R, it's a lot better for that. It's a lot better for clarity for trailing ends of tones. Are you a cables make a difference kind of guy like Golden Sound and Sajid? Are they? I don't think they are. I've talked with Golden about that very topic. I think he's not that kind of guy. I don't know why you have that opinion of it. What's funny is like, and I see you brought up Amir there as well. What's funny is that like, as soon as you start talking about things that are potentially beyond our current understanding of headphone measurements, like frequency response and total harmonic distortion and stuff like that, then suddenly it's like people like the ASR simps, let's call them, they immediately want to put you in the same category as the people who are like, yeah, let's use this crazy cable to make a difference, and all this stuff, talking about like audiophile rocks and stuff like that, right? They love to put you into that category rather than even bothering to try and get engaged with the position that maybe there's something in their analysis that is incomplete, right? Or something in the measurement there's something more to the measurement. Something more to, I'm even going to go as far as to say that like, maybe we are capturing everything, but at the very least, our analysis of that is incomplete. And I know many objectivists who hold that same view. But it's the people who are just sort of like the blind followers, right? And it's funny because like Amir tried to do exactly that. He tried he quoted something that I didn't even write. He quoted something from Torque and said, "Look at all the stuff that Andrew's writing. Of course he's like a cable, believer in all this stuff." And it's like, I didn't write that. Good job, trying to discredit me. But it's not just him. It's like people in that world, they love that feeling of like confidence, right, that they get about looking at a graph or something like that, which is fine. It's just that there is so much more to this than what the current analyses are providing. So yeah, to answer that question, no, I'm not a cable believer. I don't think those guys are either. Like I don't want to I want to speak for them, but like I'm pretty sure. Like I've spoken with Golden about that topic, and he's no. Martinez, thank you. Modern $300 IEM blessing IE 300 versus 1,000 USD IEM from 6 to 7 years ago. Western W60 SE 846. Yeah, I do think that IEMs have come a long way, partially due to the influence of, the Chinese manufacturers, really dialing stuff in and get it, and things are so competitive in that world. As an example, so there's a new one from The Audio called the Elixir, which is right here. Let's see if I can show you this. And this is only around $200, I think, maybe just over. And you think, okay, $200 IEM, it's so much better than what much more expensive IEMs in the past used to be. Like, I would take that over the Westone W60 or W80 every single day. It's not close. The SE846, I'm not sure. I need to. It's been a long time. That one, I have heard it a long time ago, but it's like, yeah. But it just goes to show, this stuff is getting so much better. To give a sense of the Elixir there, it's Kato adjacent, Moonrep Kato adjacent. It's very competitive with that one. Another really nice one that it's not perfect, but I actually was so surprised at how normal and good it sounded is the Raptgo hook, the planar piezo thing here. Oh, come on, it's focusing on my face. There we go. This thing. I was expecting it to be weird and esoteric, and it's not perfect. There's a thingy in the treble I'm not too thrilled about, but man, is it ever so much more normal than what I was expecting. And so it just goes to show this stuff is not only is it highly competitive, but it's getting better, and manufacturers are I would say if any progress has been made in audio, at least for headphone audio, the most significantly it has been in IEMs, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, there's progress in other areas as well, but like how competitive IEMs have gotten, it's ridiculous. People are asking about the Meze 109 Pro. It's very good. So obviously, show impressions, right? So I don't know, like, I'll need to get one in and spend more time with it to get a sense of really how competitive it is. But from that initial listen, a couple of things surprised me. One was that the tuning, while still Meze-ish with that sort of warmer tilt overall, it actually sounded like it didn't have any major weirdnesses. Like, it was more just like subtle colorations and flavor that would maybe enhance certain people's, if they have that preference, right? Like it's a little bit warmer, a little bit more thick in the bass. It's a little bit more airy and in the upper treble, like above 10K. But the cool thing about that is it still sounded like it had ear gain, like it had up to 3K. It had that rise there. It sounded like it had really good clarity for the mids. It didn't get lost despite the sort of subtle U-shaped thing going on. So I thought it was interesting for the tuning. But then beyond that, it also sounded reasonably detailed. I don't think quite on the level of like the Focals, but better than way better than the 99 Classic, and better than I think most people were probably expecting it to be. That's the thing, is people see the 109 and think, oh, it's an open back 99. It's not. It's a totally custom driver. I went in thinking it's an open 109. I went in kind of being like, it'll probably be comfortable and just not that competitive for sound quality. But I really think it's going to be a lot more competitive than people think, or people maybe who watch this, watch what we're talking about, are sort of expecting. And so it's the kind of thing where I'm sure that you could probably get something with better value, for less money. Like I'm still thinking like, the Edition XS and stuff like that. Like that stuff is all ridiculous value. But for an open back dynamic driver headphone with that kind of tuning, it's yeah, probably my favorite of all the Mezes I've heard so far. So that's, yeah, I mean, obviously weight. This is the thing. Like I saw some people like they were like making purchases based on like show impressions. I'm like no, like just be patient here. Wait until stuff actually gets evaluated and then decide whether or not it's for you. So I don't want to like overhype something without having spent time with it. But it is one of the things that I'm most hyped to get in and spend more time with. That one and the new RAL prototype, the Circle Moral thing. Those are the two that I'm like, wow, that's really exciting. I mean, yeah, obviously the Warwick acoustic stuff was like the craziest stuff that I heard. But like, I mean, apart from the Grand Utopia speakers, but like for the headphone stuff, the Aperio was ridiculous. But that's also like 30 plus 35 grand or something ridiculous, right? So, definitely excited to hear that at some point if I can. But the stuff that is a little bit more attainable for people, it was those two. I guess that the RAL is also going to be around 2,500, so it's not that different from the headphones from the Warwick acoustic one, like the Bravura. Well, you like that ASR Simps, yeah. Well, you know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like it's the people who will comment the same things, not really having bothered to engage with the thought process. Actually, speaking of cables, I see you're saying anybody who uses AudioQuest is a cable believer. No, like cable believer. Like what you mean? Like that they make a difference? No, like people can use it for all kinds of other reasons. Like they can use it for ergonomic reasons or aesthetic reasons. That's totally fine. But I will at some point need to do a video, I think, on just cables in general, just so that I can like kind of plant the flag and be like, look, this is not something that you should put money towards. like you buy it for aesthetic and ergonomic reasons. That's even in situations where you might there might be impedance differences or something like that. I still don't think it's proportional. That's kind of my stance on it, and it's fine if people have a different, if they think, oh yeah, it makes a difference. I've never had that experience, so I need to make that video at some point and talk about good reasons to buy cables, because there are, at least in my opinion. Critical, this slightly deviates from the Harman target. It's absolute garbage. No, he doesn't use the Harman target. Is Resolve getting the Zal this Christmas? Or Zale? Yeah. No, that's way out of my budget. That would be amazing. It's funny because I'm also like one of those people who's like, I've said it many times. Every time in this stream, I talk about how the source equipment, like the amps and DAC, like engine, is basically just a drawn-out sunk cost fallacy. It's a game that people love to play where it's just never proportional. And even I, after hearing that Zale amp, was like, wow, that's that's something. So there's a reason, like everybody was hyping it up like at the show, and everybody kept saying this is the best sounding amplifier they've ever heard for headphones. And me walking in there fairly skeptical, probably thinking, yeah, that's probably got some neat functions and it's got probably lots of power. It's the best that I've ever heard the DCA Noir and the Stealth by a long shot. I would need to hear it for like dynamic driver headphones, just to see kind of how that goes. But you guys know me, like it's one where like if we ever do like an ABX comparison thing with it, I mean, I would be very shocked if even just like a regular non-audiophile person wouldn't be able to tell the difference. What's your opinion on upgrading the Focal Clears to HE1000 V2? Is it really an upgrade? Goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's very dependent on the things that you value, the things that you're sort of indexing for. Because some people will be like, I love the contrast of the Clear, And other people can be like, I can't, I can't deal with the, the absence of spacious quality that the HE1000s give you. So if you want soundstage and space and all that stuff, HE1000. If you want contrast, punch, dynamics with a slight sort of mid-forwardness, go with the clear. That's really what it is. It's like, it's not like upgrade is a difficult thing to talk about there because there's so much more to it than that. What cables do you use? This is the default Alir cable. Oh, you mean like for the I just bought some ones off of Amazon. So it's yeah, like and then there's also like some of the IFI ones. I know you can't see this, but oh yeah, these are the IFI ones that they include. So like, if that, like, right now there's like a contingent of people probably watching the stream going like all of his opinions are invalidated because he uses Amazon cables, and there's another contingent that's probably like, whew, thank God. um what's Are bone conduction drivers just snake oil? Can you identify whatever characteristics bone conduction drivers impart to the sound? I've only heard two. The other being the Mest, Unique Melody Mest, I think. And I think that's one where, yeah, I mean, I didn't really hear much from it. But it's hard to say because, two examples is like, not enough to make a assessment. It's one of those where like you'd have to kind of take it apart, disconnect them, put it back, and see if anything changes in frequency response. Cables absolutely make a difference. If you don't have one, you can't listen. It depends. What if you have wireless headphones? How would you divide the cost of a headphone amp DAC? I think I get what you're saying. So put 90% of your money into headphones. It depends. Like if you're like getting like the ultra endgame stuff, some of the like source equipment amplifiers they end up costing way more, right? So you might have a headphone that's like ultra endgame that's like $4,000, but then you could still end up spending like the same on a DAC and the same on an amp, right? If not more, because that's just how much that stuff costs. But for most people, yeah, like if you're spending $1,000, spend 900 of it on headphones, unless you don't have because there's people who just don't have anything, right? And so then it's worth asking that question, what to get. And yeah, then you want to spend probably like $200 to $400, depending on if you need like a balanced output. You could probably spend less, right? And you could always spend more if you want to, but like you're not going to proportionally get the sound quality improvements that you would if you just spent more of that money on different headphones. What headphones am I wearing? This is the Alir with Utopia pads. Have you tried the final ZE3000 or UX3000? So that was actually another really surprising one. I didn't try the ZE3000 or ZE3000, but the UX3000 I did try, and yeah, I got to get one of those in. I think I'm seeing if I can get one of those in and do a review on that hopefully soon. I also need to get the Sony XM5 in. They're just sold out everywhere, and oh man, the craziest thing was I'm not sure how much of this I should make public, but like we actually got an email from Best Buy asking us to review the XM5 and to see if we would, and they'd send it over. And they gave us a whole bunch of like conditions. They offered to pay, I'm not sure if I should say how much, but they offered to pay around $1,000 for video. We would get to keep the headphone. But then we would also have to comply with their guidelines or conditions, right, for the review. And I looked through them, and it was, I mean, like I probably wouldn't have done it anyways because that's not how our system works. But still, I was just curious what those guidelines were for other people who were going to review that headphone. And yeah, it's as ridiculous as you might imagine. Don't compare it to anything else. It's not really a review then, is it? Don't say anything negative about the product. Like, And this is common. This is like the way this is why, like, for me, doing something, like, if I were independent, if I were, like, trying to do this stuff on my own, that would be super compelling, because you don't make that kind of money from AdSense or anything like that. Plus they offer the affiliate links, right? You can get like 20, I can't remember if it's like 15%, 20% commission on sales from your links. And it's like, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with that world. Like, honestly, I would not. I was just like, I wouldn't do it. I understand why people do, though. It's because it's trying to make money doing this kind of stuff is difficult. But man, I'm so glad that I don't have to. I'd probably just like do something else. Like, I'd have a totally unrelated career. Like, I had an unrelated career. And I was just doing this for fun. How do you get in this field of work? Yeah, this is related to that topic. Yeah, it's just, I was doing this for fun. I mean, I liked growing a channel. I liked just putting my opinions out there, as cursed as many of them were back then. And randomly met up with Andrew and Taryn, and we just have drinks and talk about headphones and nerd out about audio and stuff like that. By the way, those guys are audio nerds just like I am. And so we'd have beers, and eventually we just kind of got into the idea of doing some sort of collab, and then eventually that evolved into this situation now where we're building up a headphone media platform, which is the channel. I see a moon. Thank you. Great name, Moonborn Unicorn. It's very descriptive. Would you do a video on the fake headphone market? It's interesting because I have seen some stuff about that, but I don't know enough about it. So yeah, it is interesting. Maybe at some point, because I think the biggest ones there are like the Sennheisers, right? Because the HD100S and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, I think that maybe was a fake Abyss, or like fake, I can't remember if it was fake Abyss or fake Odyssey. I'm not talking about the monoprice stuff. It might have been a fake Odyssey, like an actual, like a perfect replication. Like, they even wrote on it like LCD2 or something like that. So yeah, it's very interesting. So at some point, maybe. No more than 25% of budget on source chain. Yeah, exactly. Like, so as much as I was just saying how crazy of an experience that sale amplifier was, and it was, that's really like don't do that unless you're like already like in the crazy high end game. Like, I know a lot of people who were there with me who heard it were like, I need to buy this, because they already have Sesvaras and whatever else, right? If you are looking to buy some headphones, and you don't have anything, or you're not, like, your first high end headphone purchase, don't do that. Like, don't think you need to do that. Put your money into headphones first. With like, I think I've mentioned this before, in total maybe like $400 to $600 worth of source equipment. I don't have crazy expensive stuff personally, and it's just fine, right? It's only like the crazy, once you're at that crazy high end and you're like, okay, what else can I upgrade? Then yeah, I think it makes sense. So I just reading that question about the Oracle versus the Variations versus Monarch Mark II. Yeah, so there is a step up from the Oracle to the Variations as far as technical performance is concerned, and then again to the Monarch Mark II, but less so. But one thing I will say is I actually prefer the Oracle's tonal balance over the Variations, even though I think the Variations is fantastic. For me, I think it has even a little too much energy at around like 3K, like the ear gain. For me, it's just a little much, and so I found the Oracle a little bit. And it's funny because I never actually compared them, but I don't remember thinking that when I had the Oracle. And it's not overall level. It's the relationship between upper mids and treble, because that all of that determines kind of like the relationship between different harmonics that you hear. And to me, the balance was a little better on the Oracle. But I know that other people who don't have as well, it all depends on the ear canal, right? For other people, it's totally fine. So I think I just am overly sensitive to that region for my ear canal. And then yeah, going up to the Monarch Mark II, that's the best one out of all those. That's like neutral analytic with a bass boost, but I like that, but I do also understand, there's some criticism about some of the treble. And I would say the same. It's excellent. I understand why it's at the top of Crin's list, but nothing is perfect, and that's probably where you put the scrutiny. Yeah, but I use an IHA 6, but I wouldn't buy that today, probably. That's only for like stupid, inefficient planers. I don't think it makes that much sense because you get noise floor, right? I bet the Synad is poor because of the noise score. That's not why you should be buying things anyways. But yeah, you should do a video on how to do beginner headphone setup. Actually, there's an article that Chrono's putting together, I think, on exactly that. And I think the recommended setup there is the Atom stack. I don't want to give it away because I don't actually know, but I think it might be the JDS, some sort of JDS stack, which I think is also, I would recommend that as well. Did you listen to Cayenne HA300 Mark II? No, I didn't. But I did listen to the Felix Envy, which was crazy. I listened to the Svara off of that, and the Diana TC. The Envy was really nice. Even people who don't normally like the Svara, like crazy people, they liked it off the Envy a lot. What is? No, sorry, no, I'm not talking about the Nan 6. I know what you're talking about there. I think the Nan 6 is an actual headphone that they just took inspiration from those designs, even though it looks like it, which is fine. I'm talking about the there's ones, I think they were Odyssey, if I'm remembering correctly, where it was just like a complete knockoff. But the lines do get blurred a little bit because there is also like the M1060 and stuff like that, where it's like not really it's not a fake headphone, it's a real headphone, but it is very much, taking, dare I say, ripping off, another design. But there are designs out there where it's not like, who's to say you shouldn't be able to do that. I think that the only thing I don't like is when they take things that look like another brand, like some of the industrial design, to make it seem like that other brand, right? Like if I remember on the M1060s, they did kind of take that same like A shape from Odyssey, which is probably the worst part about all that, because the driver is not the same driver; it's a different driver, and it actually is its own thing. So what is the 4620? I did try the IS Siren a long time ago. I thought it was a little counterclockwise tilted. Like, I like a little more bass in my IEMs, but pretty good. Yeah. Let's see what's next. Let's dive into some spicy stuff here, guys, because it's going to be a little bit of a shorter stream than last time. I'm still dealing with like the jet lag. It's longer than I was expecting. Like, normally it's not so bad. What are your thoughts on the Diana TC? Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I heard it off of the Envy and I heard it off of the Sale. Again, I liked it off of the Sale the best. I I think that it's a fairly straightforward upgrade over the Phi. It's very detailed, very technical, good contrast as well. But the same things that were sort of, the quirks of the Phi, I think are going to be are the quirks of the TC as well. Like I actually think that the tonal balance is better on the TC, but still there's some, like, I had some fit issues, so I think they can still kind of iron some of that out, I think. And also, yeah, I mean, I actually directly compared the TC versus the Susvara, and the TC is definitely up there for the technical qualities. So that's interesting. But then I still felt that the Susvara had the better upper mids and treble, while the TC, I think, had the more engaging bass. But I think also that's how I describe the difference. But the TC, it's incurring the air gap, right? Because it kind of hangs like this a little bit, so you get the bass boost, which is, it's clever. I love it when manufacturers do that kind of stuff, because you can tell there's some sort of like intentionality behind the mechanical design. It's just that for me, there were comfort issues still. So, director. Oh, hey, that's yeah, I know. I'm blanking. Michael, right? Thank you. Wait, is it Michael? Did you change your name, right? Anyways, yeah. Cheers. Thank you, and likewise. Oh yeah, it is Michael. Yeah. Everyone check out Michael's channel. Oh, the 4620 is the ear. Sorry. Yeah. No, we'll do. I'd rather do the actual 5128. Like the get the. I want to get the actual head with the boot. Because I'm now spoiled with what is effectively closer to a 45 CA, because I have it on a like a stand that's kind of like more closely resembles like the distance of an actual human head. It's just so much more convenient to put it on the thing, knowing like you can have confidence that the clamp pressure is going to be, somewhat close to an actual human head. I mean, you can never perfectly say, oh, this is the average, but it's so much more convenient to do that, and I would rather have a system where I can just do that and put it on the next one, right? Because I'm going to have a whole bunch. So yeah, that's why I want the actual 5128. Any plans to? I mean, it's like 40 grand. It's not cheap. 35 grand, something like that. So if I find a cool 35 grand line around, no, I'm just kidding. It's one of those things where it's a we'll probably need to get that eventually, but once it's a priority, So, to answer your question, hopefully soon. I don't know. When will we see a review of the Mark 11 to 5909? Maybe audiophile level. They need to dial in the treble. Like, I know they improved a lot with firmware, but I still think that I need to check it out with the new firmware. I don't want to make comments without having sat down and listened to the latest firmware, because I haven't. But from the one that I did evaluate, my comments are there on the forum already, along with the measurements. It's a solid foundation. I don't think it was quite ready with the firmware. That's really my only assessment there. And also, I mean, yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like you look at the price and you go, that is audiophile level price. Is it audiophile level sound quality? And I don't think it's quite there yet. So hopefully they can dial in that with the firmware. But also, even when they do, I think their biggest issue is the price tag for that, because think about the comparison of that with, like, the AKG N700 NC Mark II, right? Which technically has better target compliance, so even among their own, like for Harman's own, tolerances, the NC700 Mark II, I think is closer. So, yeah. Is it going to be $700 better than other noise canceling headphones. Yeah, that's a tough one. What tube amps have you tried and can recommend? Amps and Sound Kenzie, ZMF Pendant, the Amps and Sound Forge, a lot of the Amps and Sound stuff. I love that stuff. But I've also heard a lot of the Oris stuff. Is it Nirvana? I can't remember. HA2 SE. Then I've heard the Felix Audio stuff. There's one on my desk in the studio right now. So yeah, I've heard a few. Getting more into it. I want to get even more into it because, you know, like to me, it's like that does make a pretty big difference. Not necessarily always better, but at least there's a more tangible difference there than going from like a topping to an SMSL. So that's why I'm more interested in that stuff, right? Not to say that those are like, okay, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of those, but like, you know, it's fine if you are. But you know, going from one topping to another, or going from a topping to an SMSL, or any of these other, you know, like let's say good budget options that are out there, it's not going to be a meaningful difference. And I'd wager most people couldn't tell in a blind test. Whereas at least with the tube amps, you know, for better or worse, there are very strong differences. Any suggestions for a unique headphone? Unique. Primarily in terms of sound. There's a lot of headphones that are unique. Depends what you mean by unique. Like if you're talking like something that is a little bit the head audio headphone. That is unlike most other headphones, unlike every other headphone really for the sound quality. It's a very unique kind of sound to it. Also the RAL SR1A. That's unique. Meze Elite is another one that's fairly unique. Meze Elite is interesting because, yeah, I mean, I think I said in my review, I don't think it's competitive with the Utopia and the other $4,000 stuff, right? But it is better than the Empyrean and for technical qualities, and then also it has a tuning that is while not, you know, linear or neutral or anything, it's just very pleasant, very enjoyable. So that's unique, I guess. That's how I would describe that. And it's not without its quirks, right? It has a weird feature, like I think up to 400 hertz, but there's something about the way that they achieve that balance with the treble. I imagine that the 109 Pro is going to have a similar kind of thing where you're like, that is a weird feature, but I don't mind it. Spicy take. If budget is under $500, go IEM. If under $2,000, go headphones. If over $2,000, go 2-channel. So I disagree with that, but I totally understand why you would have that take. The sub $500 IEM market is highly competitive. With that said, I think you can still get better sounding headphones under $500, right? So, you know, just because the IEM market is highly competitive under $500 doesn't mean that there aren't also amazing sounding headphones. I would even go as far as to say under $300. So, and it's competitive there too, right? Under 2K, yeah, I mean, you can, yeah. How much is the Aria Stealth? It's under that though, I think. But yeah, I think that makes sense for high-end headphones. Over 2K is when you do start getting into some really good 2-channel stuff, from the stuff that I've heard so far, and I'm getting more into that. I need to start reviewing speakers, and the first ones I should review is probably the Amazon Basics ones. It'll be like $20 or something like that, and it'll be cool because I'll use the ear simulator to do measurements of it to see how it compares to, you know, headphone frequency response, because I have a proof of concept of that with the Head 07s, right? So, yeah. Be interesting. Not the Meze Elite. Yeah, I still don't think the Meze Elite is competitive for the price, but it's like you got to be into the other stuff, the aesthetics, the comfort, the builds, all that stuff, and then I think it's fine, because you can definitely get better. I think you can get better sound quality for $4,000, but it doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. I thought it was enjoyable at least. Could you define / explain the difference or pendency? Is that a new word? Of detail and instrument separation. Does detail and speed always result in good instrument separation? So yeah, so when I'm doing reviews, oftentimes, I could spend a really long time giving the subjective descriptions of things, right? But it wouldn't necessarily mean anything to people who don't view these things the same way. But when I am making those assessments, to give a bit of context, I think you can break the concept of detail into multiple different things. One of those things is clarity for trailing ends of tones, right? And people call this, the clarity of the decay and stuff like that. But it's not actually decay, but you know what I mean? Clarity for trailing ends of tones. The other one is the immediacy of the initial leading edge, and that's actually something that right now I'm working on trying to improve with my own prototype, where I've got the clarity for trailing ends of tones down, but it does not have yet, at least with the current driver, it's not yet quite quick and tight and controlled enough. Now, I also think you can talk about it in terms of how well separated things are, not in terms of soundstage, but in terms of like the ability to have multiple instruments being well controlled and well defined subjectively versus things mushing together. And before somebody says this is all frequency response, yeah, sure, but I'm just describing the subjective experience, right? So on that topic, I should note, the more I investigate this, the more I start to think that maybe there actually is something else. Because I've been running with this hypothesis that we're just not analyzing frequency response sufficiently, right? It's incomplete, our analysis. I think that's a generally safe approach, but the more I investigate this, the more I'm starting to think, man, there are things that it's like maybe it's there somewhere in frequency response. It's very subtle, but I can't correlate it. But yeah, to get back to the question about detail, so I think you can also kind of parse it in those ways as well, right? How well is something controlled? And the Odysseys, for example, do a great job at that. Like the LCD XC, for example, when you add EQ, right? It does a great job there. I think that they're probably related. Like, I think the better the immediacy of the initial leading edges, the better at control during busy passages it might also be. However, you can have stuff that's really blunted and the trailing ends of tones are indistinct, but have it still be separated and controlled during busy passages. So I don't think that being excellent at one requires that it be excellent at others. But for simplicity's sake, I often just refer to this stuff, as technicalities, right? Because that could mean so many different things to different people. Yeah, the Empyreans were not for me, really. I know they have a fan base. Weirdest build headphone I tried? Oh, probably those Spirit Torino headphones. I tried those at the Munich High End, which were interesting. Oh, your stealth is now 1300. Okay, so that's less expensive now. Oh, what's up, VSG? Good to see you. That new Campfire IEM is amazing. Which one are you talking about? I didn't listen to the Trifecta. I listened to the DMS listened to the Trifecta and the Pathfinder. He liked the Pathfinder. He did not like the trifecta. Yeah, I mean, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like you're doing a lot of show coverage. You can only really focus on a few things for like getting assessments, because the rest of the time you're doing interviews, and you're like you're getting B-roll and photos, and talking to other people at the show. There are a lot of people who came up and said hi to us. There was somebody who brought his own headphone, which was awesome. Like his own headphone with the timpani driver that he'd made, and he had us try that, which was great. It was it's pretty good, for someone who's just like made his own thing. And I thought that was awesome. um, yeah, it's interesting. I didn't realize that the RE Stealth was down to 1300. That's interesting. Um, what are the chances you think a 5128 will meaningfully change our ability to extrapolate info on technicalities from frequency response? If technicalities is in frequency response. I don't think that much, to be honest. I think it'll give us it'll give us a more complete picture of, you know, uh, 20 hertz to 20K. There will be things that we will be able to identify, I think, that has been demonstrated already, like certain differences in IEMs. I think that is something that the 5128 can reveal, or at least it's been shown to reveal some difference there. But for over-ear headphones, I don't think it's going to be as groundbreaking for some of the technicality stuff as maybe we might hope. Only because there's other, like, there's well, my biggest contention there is that, like, we could theoretically put a good microphone at the eardrum of individual people, and we could understand what their head related transfer function is perfectly, like an individual person's head related transfer function, not a rig, right? And we could get a frequency response to perfectly match their head related transfer function. We would then need to, in order to determine if that's responsible for technicalities, we would need to do this on multiple people and have them do their preference ratings as well. Or we have to do preference research based on HRTF matching, or something along those lines. Without doing that, I don't think that we could yet demonstrate, like, we're basically begging the question, or like we're making a pretty significant assumption that HRTF matching is going to be more desirable for people, because, and the reason why I say that is because we kind of know that that by and large it's actually not preferred. Car horns. There, I got to qualify that a little bit, because what we don't know is how well the fine grain stuff would be received. But we do know, at the very least, that people didn't prefer DF and free field HRTFs from a Gross. They preferred it to be warmer, and so they preferred it with a bass lift, and that agrees with what the research showed us for speakers. With the Harman research for speakers. So within that, I mean, yeah, I think there's probably room for more fine-grained results. But I think that I don't think we could go in there with the assumption that HRTF matching would be better, right? Or subjectively more well received for the widest range of people. Because I don't know, like, there's enough. I think we'd have to modify that statement, right? We'd have to, or qualify it in some way and say, oh, wow, the cops are after me. They didn't like me saying that. It's very loud. Like, I'm right next to a street. Right next to a main road there. They're always driving by. But yeah, I think we have to modify that statement a little bit and say, fine-grained HRTF matching above 5K, right? We could potentially investigate if that yields a better result, or more subjectively well preferred result. in keeping with whatever tilt the Harman preference research had. So including a bass shelf, right? For example, um, you know, discovering that would be interesting, or investigating that would be interesting. With that said, I don't think that I don't think that using a 5128 is going to give us more info. Like you can theoretically still do that research with a Gross Keymarm, is what I'm saying. You won't have it won't be perfectly accurate above 10K, but it's not random either. It's not like a mini DSP ears or anything like that. So, does that answer the question? a I think it'll give us a lot more. It'll give us better information. I don't think it's going to categorically change things, though. It might for IEMs, but that's it. Your pick between the Focal Legia and Monarch Mark II. Monarch Mark II. That's a pretty straightforward answer for me. Yeah, guys, you're asking about the 109 Pro in the thumbnail. People think that it might be a open back 99, but it's not. It's a very different. It's a totally custom driver. The whole thing is very different sounding. It does not sound like a 99. In some ways, I almost think that they shouldn't have called it a 109 because people were bound to think that. But it's much more high end sounding. Do you think the Meze 109s are possibly going to start a new trend for Meze sound being reined in to be more appealing to fans of Harman and Harman adjacent tuning? Do you think the 109 competes at the price range? We don't know the price range. We know it'll be under 1,000, but beyond that we don't know much. Because people have said 700, people said 800, people said 600. I have no idea. With that in mind, though, your comment there about Harman, the other ones also kind of do. Like the Empyrean, apart from the above 10K, is and the lower stuff as well. Like the main frequency response there is very close to Harman. It's like a couple dB off. So it depends on what you consider the defining characteristics of Harman. Are you talking about bass shelf? Are you talking about the treble down like tilt? Because the key thing that stood out for me with the 109 Pro was that a lot of the things that I felt were overdone on some of like the Empyrean, for example, were a lot more subtle. They were more like controlled and so there's a little bit of flavor there. There's a little bit of a hint of coloration, but it's not done in a way that was distracting to me. And then also the way that it handled the upper mid range, I thought was good. There was an extra kind of like, I mean, I don't know if this is true. I need to measure it, but from that, what I was hearing, it sounded like it had just maybe a little bit more than what you find on like the Empyrean, but I could be wrong about that. But it's not like their headphones in the past were that esoteric. They were just well, I mean, I guess they were, but that's only because they had unique kind of quirks in the bass and in the treble. Like the majority of it had the rise up towards 3K. So it just depends on what you consider defining characteristics. If you think like a distinct sub-bass shelf is the defining characteristics of Harman, which is probably what we should think of it as, because otherwise, like the rest of it is literally just a summed free field and diffuse field HRTF that's smoothed to 1/2 octave or whatever it is, right? Like that's not anything unique to Harman. The thing that's unique is the tilt, right? So so when you think Harman, think warmer than what is anatomically, going on with our ears. Would like with a tilt with the bass shelf, or you guys would see it this way, yeah. Yeah, the cops are on to me. I think the most interesting thing to me about the 5128, aside from the 4 to 5K potentially being more accurate is the way acoustic impedance of 5128 might affect bass measurements. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm referring to. I think that especially for IEMs might, because it's one of those things, like with IEMs, like nobody really takes the Harman IEM target that seriously. I mean, I suppose some people do, but like, that's not the default. Hasn't been for, not the way that it is for over-ear headphones. And I think part of the reason for that might be because of what they use for the bass, like, and the 5128. If they did they think they are doing more research on it on the 5128. That might reveal something that would be different. And I mean, more accurate is good, right? But you also have to keep in mind that this is the other way to think about this is it's also just a different ear, right? It's a different head and a different ear. We might be able to get more accurate results from it, but the big thing here is that it's just a different ear. And the problem with it is that there isn't a well-established target for it, and I don't think there's going to be one until somebody like Kryn or me, put something together. What I would do, and I'm not sure, I don't think Kryn is going to do this, but what I would do is I would take a look at the DF-HRTF of the 5128 and apply the same shelf filters that Harman did for their preference tilt. Then the awesome thing about that is we'd be able to do that without smoothing it, right? So we'd probably smooth it like a little bit, but like not to that degree. And so we'd actually have more fine-grained information. The trick with that is that when you're representing it might be more accurate and you'd have more fine-grained result and probably satisfy audiophiles a lot more. It would make it more difficult to understand for the average person. So I think the only way to do that is maybe with a compensated graph. Wait, is Kryn here? Kryn, let me know what you're going to do for your target on your 5128 or 4620. Oh, there he is. Gamer Hours. What's up, man? Yeah, let me know what you want to do for your target, and I have ideas if you wanna tackle that together. We could set the standard. Because I think Harman they've said that they're not making their research public on the 5128. So it's up to us, man. Got to do it. I know Sound Guys already has one. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I don't know what it is, but yeah. You're gonna do something similar, yeah. It's it makes sense, right? I mean, it's kind of what I would want to do even for the Gross stuff. Yeah, okay, we'll do. We'll make sure it's compatible. Because like for this gets into that weird thing about like the directionality of sound. I've talked about this like 3 times in a row now, but like. Sean seems to think that the smoothing is okay because as you change the direction, as you change the position, the features, the 5K plus features go away, or it sort of smooths out. But I still think that you should include those features. And that would be another way to do it. Yeah, build a target based on headphones and IEMs that match Harman on Gross, or that are like kind of Harmonish on Gross. That's how you would then do a smooth version, I think. Oh, it's been delayed. Oh, damn. Yeah, I would probably do. I'd want to play around with both an unsmoothed HRTF, DF HRTF on the 5128 with the Harman shelf filters applied. And then also a smooth version just to see what that difference would be, because otherwise it's not an apples to apples comparison with the older data. And if we want that to be an apples to apples, we'd have to smooth it to 1/3 or 1/2. Yeah, which is something that like it's my biggest frustration with the whole thing. Like, have you ever tried to like EQ something to perfectly match Harman in the treble? Even like apart from the 9K dip, the concha dip and stuff like that. Like if you try and perfectly match to Harman in the treble, it doesn't sound right. Like it's like It's because of the smoothing. I'm pretty sure. And there's probably a measurement artifact there as well, especially above 10K. We know that. Let's see. We'll do a couple more here, guys. Best headphone for metal and EDM. I've been looking for a grail for me. I mean, it depends if you EQ. And the price range. I actually quite like this Lear with Utopia pads off, or Alex with, you could put Utopia pads on Alex off of the 30 or 32 ohm out of the amps on Kenzie, so it down tilts the whole thing. So I think for metal and EDM, you'd want a warmer tilt, something with a bass lift of some kind. That's what that does to this, essentially. To a certain extent, I would recommend the Odyssey LCD 2F with a little bit of EQ, or an LCD X 2021 with a bit of EQ. That'd be pretty solid. So okay, trying to figure out what you guys are talking about here. You would need a rig or use someone else's measurements. Much cheaper. Even, oh, you're talking about getting into EQ. Yeah, so Gabe has it. Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's above 5K. I mean, even the stuff below shifts depending on the person, but that stuff is easier. Like, it doesn't shift in as extreme ways. Whereas for individual HRTFs, if you look at like maybe about a median or mode of what those individual HRTFs are, I mean, they don't do it that way in Hammerschlag and Mahler, but like if you look at all of them, you can kind of get a sense of kind of what that would be. And there is a dip typically at around 7K, for example. I mean, it doesn't look like a smooth line. So that's why for individual people, not on a measurement rig, but for individual people, you got to do above 5K by year. Or at least use the graph to get things to a reasonable spot, but don't try and get equal loudness or perfect smoothness relative to the target. That's really when you got to start dialing it in by year. Which is another thing that I see all the time on, certain forums where people are like, this is the perfect matching of the Harman target with EQ, and it's like, you don't even know if you like that. You just think that it's all about confidence. It's all about like, this gives me a confidence that I'm listening to something that is objectively, going to score well, right? But it's like, nobody stops to think about whether or not that's actually what they want to listen to. Because even in the cluster analysis, right? Like, people need to read the segmentation paper. People weren't there. There's a spread of and most people would have preferred the one that they ended up with, but like there is a spread. The Krinzolve target, Harman 2018 sub bass. That's a lot. 2013 mid. No. Oh, wait, up mids. Okay, sub bass. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I could do it that way. That'd be interesting. It's funny. I have somewhat of a different, like, I understand that like the bottom of the ear gain is important, like the dip, kind of before the bass shelf, for clarity. But I have somewhat of a like, it's probably contentious in some circles, but like, I tend to think that like for the real world where people listen to all kinds of stuff that isn't necessarily recorded all that well, having a bit more presence there is probably fine. So it doesn't need to be as distinct of a sub bass shelf for versatility. Now, if you're only listening to good recordings, stuff that is tokens of full frequency range, then it's probably fine. Then I think having that bottom part of the ear gain dip there is it's fine, because then at least you're going to hear the bass coming through. But on a lot of recordings, that stuff is just lopped off. Like there's just no information down there, so your things sound super lean as a result. Do you think the Harman target needs to be redone? No. I mean, yes, for a 5128. But as I was saying, is you don't even need to do the research again to find that same target on 5128. You just need to use the same filters and use the summed DF, because really the preference research where they had however many, I can't remember, in the hundreds of test subjects, um, that research found, I mean, maybe there would be a reason to suspect that the filters would be different, like the average, like the preference filters that got applied would be different on 5128. But at the moment I'm not really thinking of why it would be different. I can't think of why it would be different. So you could theoretically just take a summed DF and apply the shell filters, then smooth it to 1/3 octave, and get kind of similar, right? You'd be able to do a apples to apples comparison. I'd be curious what the results would be there. Pardon the crinkling. Yeah, I feel like garbage today. Maybe I have that thing that's going around. But I also just have been like dealing with the jet lag and weird sleep schedules and yeah, working at weird hours. So maybe it's all just catching up to me. But no, I don't think that Harmon needs to be redone. I just want the unsmoothed data. You ever try Utopia Pads in the clear? That's actually on my list. DMS has asked me to do that because I think he might have bought one recently. I need to still do that, yeah. So probably next week I'll do that. It's possible to. This is a spicy take here. I appreciate the spicy takes, guys. Chef Steve and Panzer, you guys are. I think Ace did one earlier too. It's possible to get used to listening to almost anything. Anything can sound good if you listen to it long enough. The Campfire Cascade exists, though. Have you listened to that? Okay. There's stuff that I've listened to where I don't think it's possible for the brain to normalize to. If you have weirdnesses and quirks in the frequency response, but there is a general, broad spectrum, highly smoothed, like, sense of ear gain to a certain degree. I think, when I say ear gain, I mean, like, for greater definitions of that. Like there's headphones where it's, like, just totally bonkers and weird, right? But if there's any kind of ear gain, right, regardless of the target, some sort of ear gain there, yeah, I think you can get used to that. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? As long as we have something that is, like, it doesn't need to be perfectly matched to what our ears are amplifying individually, because it wouldn't be anyways. And our brain is always doing some sort of normalization. So as long as there is some sort of elevation there, I think our brains could probably get used to that. When you eat, do you find that sound changes in your headphones? I don't get to eat food for audiophile reasons. I just have an IV that I just inject sludge into. Also, no, not really. I mean, yeah, but not as soon as you're done. It's not really a problem. Thoughts on the IER Z1R versus U12T versus IE600? U12T. Well, actually, the Z1R was very good for bass, but I like the U12T better, and it fits better for me. IE600. I have to apologize a little bit for that IE600 take, because I have to recognize that, like, it might just be me who hears it as sibilant, for the reasons that we talked about earlier, right? And it's interesting because DMS and I were at Munich together, and we were listening to speakers where there were speakers that I thought the treble was great, and he found it to be sibilant. So I think this just speaks to a HRTF difference of some kind, where for me that IE600 was like, I was wincing, and it's just to do with the way that, like, my ear canal is amplifying, those frequencies, and that probably isn't being amplified in that same manner for DMS. And so I think, I mean, yeah, the measurements also did show it, but just because, like, that doesn't mean that it's going to be perceived that way for everybody. Is what I'm saying. And then also, I think it's important to consider that people are going to be using different tips. And when I switched over to different tips, okay, it was still present, but it did lessen that effect. So I think that's probably something I should have included, in that I was intending it to be a quick first impressions rather than a full deep dive. And as I kept listening, I kept going like, what? Like, I have to talk more about this. But I do think I should have included the results that I got from when I was tip rolling. It's a common question that I think people, maybe we don't engage with it enough, but like there's the question of like, should something be evaluated as is out of the box, or should it be evaluated for its potential? When you make changes with tips, or with over ear headphones, it's like with different pads, for example, or even with EQ. I could Crin actually evaluates this stuff without EQ, right? So that's something to consider, and I think there's a good argument there. That's like, if you're buying something, this is what you're going to get. Never mind whatever mods you do, or changes you do, or EQs you do. It's you're giving an assessment of the thing as is, and I totally respect that. At the same time, I do think it's worth mentioning that if you do discover that. It's just that sometimes you don't discover it in the evaluation process, or nobody's told you about it. In this case, I did find there to be a difference, but I didn't find one that I thought was optimal. But I do think I probably should have included it. Cascade, okay, so like, it had decent technical performance, I thought, but the tuning was just really strange. But it's not the worst it's not at the bottom of my list for sound quality. There's headphones that are worse. That Andover PM50 is worse. I mean, it's funny because those pink cat ear pink cat ear headphones were better than a lot of them. What else is worse? That Ovidius thing is really bad. I can't remember what else is worse. There's stuff on that list, though, on my ranking list at the very bottom. It's like, what the hell? I did not try the Campfire Audio trifecta. I think one of our... Oh, yeah, DMS tried it. He said it was very bassy, muddy kind of sound. But he liked the Pathfinder. So the collab one that they also released, he said the timbre was really good. But I didn't get a chance to try either of them. I did get a chance to talk to Ken, though. And so he was describing it. But it was one of those things where it's like DMS actually did the listening while I was doing the filming. So... how would you say the IE600 treble compares to the IE300? Despite my spicy take, I couldn't listen to the 300 long enough to get used to them because of the hot treble. I haven't done that comparison. That's another reason why it was meant to just be like a quicker video, basically. I did comparisons, but I didn't have the IE900 and I didn't have the IE300, so it's hard for me to say, Oh yeah, that Austrian hi-fi. The X55. The new one's supposed to be pretty good, though. if Sennheiser had caught you in Germany with that IE600 review that is say to the Russian front. That's funny, though, because I did chat with Sennheiser in Germany. They didn't have they weren't one of the exhibitors, but they were there just checking stuff out. Like, that's the thing, like Sennheiser, they're audio dorks just like us, right? So they're just like, oh, what's this cool thing, let's check that out, right? Like, they love this stuff. So, and I was chatting with one of the guys there about it, and it's one of those things where it's like, some people. I love the way that Crin framed it in his review of the IE600, where he likened it to enjoying blue cheese, right? For some people they can't stand it at all, but for other people they love it, right? I think that's a fair assessment of that. And for me, as much as I do like blue cheese in food, this was one of those things where I was like, I couldn't handle that trouble. I think the other thing there is the HRDF difference. I think that really does explain it. But no, like the Sennheiser guys in Germany, they were very understanding. They were like, yeah, it's we understand, So DMS has a problem with his ear size. No. His ears are far more normal. Well, I guess I don't know what normal is, but like my ears are quite large, right? And I have a that my Dumbo ears. Do you think it would be interesting to see an IEM company like Moondrop make an over ear? Yeah, it would be cool. I thought they were making one at one point. Um, if only you could afford a Gross. Okay, I have a solution for you, and I've been testing this because I have. So we have the Gross 43 IG, right? But we also have another ear sim with those harder stiffness ears. Basically, it's like the knockoff Gross, a knockoff IEC coupler with fake Gross ears, essentially. And you can get it for like $500, I think, on AliExpress. And you get like a upright fixture. And so what I've done is I've used the upright fixture and put the official Gross into it, so that I actually have something closer to. Because before I was just doing this manually, right? You can't use the over the desk method. That's wrong. You actually have to put it on a stand, on a fixture. And I was kind of doing this in a way that, I mean, it was consistent, but it was annoying to do. And now I have a much easier way of doing this. Now the interesting thing about this is what I found when I used the knockoff coupler on this fixture, the knockoff coupler that costs like $500, something like that. When I used it on this fixture, and I used the official Gross ear with a shore hardness of 0 or 35, I don't know what the actual number is. So yeah, the official KB 5001 pinna, 5000 pinna on the knockoff ear sim, I got a result that very nearly matched the official Gross results. Notably better than what the stiffer fake ear thing was. And see, in the official Gross ear, they only cost like, well, they're under 1,000. They're like 700 to 1,000, I think. So, I mean, it wasn't perfect, right? There was still a resonance at around like 12.5K, like consistent resonance there, because it's the older coupler knockoffs, right, that don't have the damping there, I think. And there was maybe a slight difference at around like 2K, maybe just 1.5 to 2K, very subtle, but it could have just been positional variance too. But so that's what I would do if I were getting into this and I couldn't afford the 10,000 or whatever it is for an official Gross with the ears. I would spend like 1,500, 1,300 to get the knockoff rig with the official Gross ear, because then the measurements are at least compatible enough for you to use the Harman target, which was developed on Gross Keymar. So that's what I would do. $1,500 is, or $1,400 is doable to get into this. 10,000 is it's difficult to swing. Never mind the 35 to 40 grand you need for a 5128, or even a 45 CA. EQ'd LCDX 2021 versus original HE6, which is more technically impressive in your opinion? Original HE6. Didn't take me long to answer that. I mean, for the things that I like, I think probably the soundstage is better on the LCDX 2021. And the tuning. But, yeah. I would still take original G6. Campfire Aura. Um, have you tried the Campfire Audio Aura earphones? Would be interesting to hear what you think of them. So, yeah, I was one of the few people who actually thought it was okay because it was just a more technical Andromeda that would be run off of like a when you run the Andromeda off of a higher output impedance source, you lose some of. I think it's higher output impedance, so I could be wrong about that. It could be the other way, but you get the idea, right? Higher output impedance, you lose bass. So people were doing that. They were running it out of like, yeah, 2.5 ohm to 4 ohm sources because they wanted to reduce the bass. And that's kind of what you get with the Aura. It's like that. And I also listen to a lot of instrumental jazz, and for that it was great. It was very detailed, but I also and a good soundstage. But I also understand the criticisms that like it's not a normal tuning. It's not a tuning that is going to satisfy people who want, you know, they want bass, right? They want this neutral or like linear, not even neutral, just like linear bass versus like a bass lift. Most people want a bass lift. So yeah, I think I think for certain genres it's fine, and I thought it was pretty good. But I think I also agree that like yeah, it's not particularly versatile. Um, and you can get better for the same money now. Like U6T, I would take the U6T over that every single day. This is like I keep saying it. This IEM needs more attention than it gets because it's like it's the fun bass of like a Neo, not quite a Neo, but that elevated bass, strong sub bass with a kind of tuning like a U12T in the ear gain region, just with a little bit more forward upper treble. So it's kind of like a U-shaped thing, but and I definitely would say it's it's got some colorations, but it's in ways that I really enjoy. And the technicalities are just like so good on that. It's if I had an Andromeda, that would be, and I was looking to upgrade, that would be the first thing I would look at would be the U6T. I like it better than the Symphonium Helios. Ha, how about that? Somewhere Precog is crying because he really, I think he likes the Helios better, but I like the U6T better. I think largely because it actually fits my ear. As much as I thought the Helios was great, I had a harder time with the fit on that one. People who are really into IEMs, though, I think they're usually fine with the longer nozzle. But for me, my baby ear canals couldn't take it. um, if you can't hear above 13K, does this mean you can ignore all the treble too hot cautions? No, because treble would be anywhere from like 4K to 4K and above. So the most of the time, 13K is not an issue for any headphones, even if there's lots of energy there. Most of the time, when treble is too hot, it's because it's somewhere in 6K to 8K to 10K, right? That's usually the range where treble being too hot kind of shows up, where people perceive that. Should I buy 7 Hertz Timeless or Final Audio's A4000? C Audio Yume Midnight. um, we'll do one more question. One more. Spicy. Not just a gear recommendation question. Because I think you guys know my answer on that. Is like, it all depends on what you want. It depends on what you're indexing for, what you value. Because sound quality past a certain point doesn't scale in a linear fashion. I don't know if it ever does. This is Vara update? I haven't heard anything about anything like that. The only new stuff that was being shown at Munich High-End was the stuff that I already mentioned, like the RAL Circumoral and the Meze 109, and those Campfire IEMs. Those were new. I suppose the final UX 3000 and the final audio stuff had some new stuff as well. I think they have a new in-ear as well. A new in-ear that's very interesting it's like a wireless in-ear. It has they were talking about how you could like send in like a scan of your ear and they would be able to develop an EQ profile for you that matched your HRTF, which I thought was like, that's so cool. Spicy take. Convenience is greater than sound quality. So for 90, well, I don't know what the number, but the majority of people, that's true. That's absolutely true. Headphone says Vara thread is going crazy on the update of Sysvara. This is the first I'm hearing of this, so I don't have any. I need to take a look at that. But where's that? Let me know if there's like information on that, because if there is an update one, I need it. Are you into vinyl? Someone else asked me that recently. No. Oh, that's the study. Okay, this is a good one. The study with sound quality doesn't scale with price. Do you agree? So if all that because there's a number of studies that often get referenced for this kind of thing, and I've seen them. I know what you're talking about. If sound quality assessments are based on target adherence in those studies, whichever one it is you're talking about, then those studies can basically be ignored. That's my take. Because for the same reason. Okay, the target adherence question is a wonderful question, or it's wonderful to use when we're talking in evaluative terms. When we're talking about what a reference point might be and the importance of a reference point. But when we're talking about how headphones should be tuned, we can ignore that. Because then we have all kinds of other things to consider, including stuff that is far more fine-grained. But also, maybe your target is a different demographic. Maybe you're going after a younger audience. Maybe you're going after an older audience. You also can ignore the stuff above 5K for the reasons that we talked about earlier with HRTF. So if the basis of those studies is how close, something gets to the target, and that there's no correlation on price to performance on that front, you can ignore that study. That's meaningless, because that's just basically putting a very narrow scope on sound quality that is reality is far greater than that scope. Okay. And as I've said many times before, and I'm paraphrasing a friend of mine who says this, all headphones should be evaluated relative to Harman, but they should never be tuned to match it, right? And it's, again, because of the smoothing, because of 1/3 or 1/2 octave smoothing versus, the reality of the headphone's frequency response, which is not smooth to that same degree. So we don't know what those features should be for individual people. So with that out of the way, right? We can basically write off any study that uses this as its narrow scope. Is there a correlation between price and performance, price and sound quality? Certainly, it is not a sufficient condition. A high price tag is not a sufficient condition for good sound. Demonstrably so. However, it might be a necessary condition. So what do I mean by that? It might be a requirement that you have that your material costs are higher in order to do certain things, in order to achieve certain results. But does that mean that they're going to get those? Does that mean that it's going to be right? No, that's entirely up to the engineer. There's many ways for things to be wrong, right? As I was saying before in the i600 video, that maybe it's like the lesser of many evils. Well, yeah, there are many, many evils when it comes to the how things could be done badly, and so because of that, price is not a sufficient condition, right? It's not enough to say that just because something is a high price tag that means that it sounds great, right? And people will make, like, that's probably the fallacy that happens the most with confirmation bias. They'll say, this cost me this much, therefore it must be this good because that's how much it costs. That's how good it is. That's nonsense. That's total bullshit. But you look at the material costs for things, as I'm learning with my own, with the one that we're developing, and material costs, but also development costs and all these other things. There is, I can absolutely see there being a necessary condition for that correlation, right? So me saying that means that basically you can have all kinds of outliers, right? You can have a general trend of performance and price kind of scaling if you have like a scatter plot, right? And how these headphones would be subjectively received by individual people. And it would probably go, like, if you just tested all headphones and had a scatter plot there, right? You could probably see among a large group of people that there would be a general trend, right? But there would be tons of outliers, right? There would be stuff where the price is not even remotely close to proportional to the sound quality, and there'd be stuff that is, where the price is way lower than how it was subjectively, received by people. And it would have to be done over a long period of time. I don't think you can do those quick snapshot things like the 15-minute, 30-minute, impressions things. It would have to be over a long period of time. But you get the idea that whatever that chart would look like, there would be outliers both ways. And so that's really what I mean when I say, certainly not, price is certainly not a sufficient condition for good sound quality, but it may very well be a necessary one. Does that answer the question? Skedra says get a tube amp. By the way, shout out to Skedra and I'm just blanking on the name of your company. He does the crazy Viking rune cable things. Cables with crazy Viking runes in them. They're beautiful. Which is the reason to buy cables, is if you like the way that they look and the way that they feel, at least in my opinion. Viking weave cables. Thank you. All right, guys. That's going to do it for this live stream. And thank you to all of you guys, especially for your spicy takes. Shout out to those of you guys who hit me up with those. And we'll, as I mentioned, we'll have more coverage of Munich High-End 2022 in the coming week and a bit. Also, we have a fun factory tour video that will be coming out, and it's not Sennheiser. So, but it's no secret. That's public already what we're doing. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. For any information on measurements, any of that kind of stuff, my headphone ranking, that's all linked in the description below this video. Up on the Headphone Community forums, and stay tuned to the review and content section there of headphones.com for the latest reviews from our team. How is DMS as a travel partner? Great. DMS is one of the funniest people to hang out with, so it was a ton of fun. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next live stream, probably some videos in between now and then. So have a good weekend.